Now I know that everyone's heard of the name Socrates, but why has no one been taught in schools why and how Socrates died? This is the video that will show you the last 30 days before Socrates died. Buckle up and relax, and you're about to go on a crazy ride. You've never heard this story before, but it's time to bring it to light. Not many people know that the great philosopher, who was well known and loved by everyone around him, died a tragic and horrible death that also symbolized his extreme wiseness and why he was deemed the wisest human to ever exist. A few years before Socrates died, he led a battle called the Battle of Delium. And in this battle, he led Athens soldiers to surrender safely in one of the most raging wars in this time period. Every single soldier was frightened and had no clue what to do, and not an enemy was touching Socrates. He stood tall in the middle of a raging war, and no one thought to come near him. His nerve was on another level for his fellow soldiers to get away safely. A few years later, he was rewarded for his bravery by scholars, students, but this is where everything changed. You wouldn't ever believe what would happen next, because Socrates' life would flip just like the other side of a coin. The wisest man ever to exist would somehow meet his downfall. Socrates is condemned by Athenian courts for believing in false prophets and false idols. See, in Athens, everyone is forced to believe in one prophet, one idol, and if you don't, you'll be cast out, condemned, executed. See, Socrates, he liked to go against the rules a little bit. He thought that anyone could have their own rules of life, and he believed that no one should have their say of how you should live your life. His rule of living was that there is no rule. And he figured out over time, as he met other philosophers, that they were on a quest for knowledge over time and time again. And he realized that the most wise of them all is the one who admits that they don't know everything. This is what set Socrates apart from everyone around him. And everything that went against greed and money and selfishness was a part of Socrates' life. And no one liked that. The only people that followed Socrates were his close friends and followers, and he had become quite popular among them because he gave them a light and a way out of a life that seemed too forceful. He gave them hope that there was more to life than being chained down by a certain perspective. Now, when Socrates had found out that he was condemned, he didn't run, he didn't hide, he simply gave up. He simply let himself become arrested, and then he was thrown in jail. He accepted it. He said, "If this is what my fate shall be, then so be it." And so he sat in Athenian jail for weeks. And this was the first day of the last 30 days of Socrates' life. Athens took this offense very seriously. So why didn't they just execute him on the spot? Why 30 days? I'll tell you why. At the time, Athens was observing the annual Delia festival, during which a sacred ship was sent to Delos to honor Apollo, and no executions could occur until its return. The religious tradition granted Socrates an unexpected reprieve, extending his life by 30 days. The delay allowed him time for final philosophical discussions with his followers, immortalized in Plato's dialogues. Socrates' loyal friend Crito visited him in the prison and urgently started begging him to escape. He argued that his execution is unjust and that he has both the means and the supporters to arrange his flight. Socrates calmly refused, insisting that obeying the law, even a flawed verdict, is a moral duty, and fleeing would undermine his lifelong teachings about justice. Their tense debate becomes a foundational moment, crystallizing Socrates' belief that integrity matters more than survival. Xanthippe, Socrates' wife, arrives at the prison in distress, weeping uncontrollably as she confronts the reality of her husband's impending death. Socrates, the great philosopher, gently calms her from mourning what he sees as merely the separation of his soul from his body, a transition rather than an end. Yet in a rare moment of quiet vulnerability, he comforts her not with abstract reasoning, but with tender words, revealing the depth of their bond beneath his famed stoicism. News about Socrates' upcoming execution spreads quickly, and soon his students began visiting him in a prison every day. Famous philosophers like Plato, along with other thinkers, crowd in his small cell. The room fills with emotion. Some students are angry about the unfair trial, while others are scared and ask Socrates what happens after death, while a few just sit quietly, watching their teacher carefully. Socrates notices how seriously they're all acting. With a small smile, he jokes, "Why are you acting like I'm some fortune teller about to give me my last prediction?" But then he uses their questions and fears as a lesson. Instead of letting them drown in sadness, he turns and visits into one of the final philosophy classes, showing them how to face even death with courage and curiosity. One morning, Socrates wakes with an uncharacteristic smile. He tells his students about a vivid dream. Apollo, the god of truth and healing, appeared to him bathed in gold light. In the dream, the god didn't speak in words, but filled him with a quiet certainty. Death is not an end, but a transformation. His followers reacted differently. Some see it as divine confirmation of Socrates' teachings about the soul's immortality. Others worry it's just a hopeful dream of an old man facing death. But Socrates seems lighter afterward, joking that even gods enjoy last-minute conversations. A skeptical poet visits Socrates in prison, mocking his philosophical acceptance of death as mere words hiding fear. With sharp wit, Socrates turns the critique into a dialogue about art and truth, questioning whether poets truly understand the meanings they convey. As their debate escalates, the poet grows frustrated as Socrates keeps showing how shallow his clever words really are. When the poet finally leaves in a huff, Socrates' students realize their teacher has proved his point, that real understanding means questioning everything, even beautiful words. One quiet afternoon, as sunlight slants through the prison bars, Socrates draws shapes in the dust with his shackled foot. "Look," he says, tracing a perfect circle. "Even as my body fails, this truth remains constant." His students watch as he connects geometric forms to his ideas about the eternal soul, arguing that just as mathematical truths outlast their drawings, the human essence survives an earthly vessel. One of his faithful students, Samius, objects that this seems like wishful thinking. Socrates dismantles his doubt with patient logic, showing how death might simply be the soul's release from its bodily prison. As Socrates continues sincerely about the soul's immortality, one of his students, Phaedo, usually the most composed of the group, suddenly breaks down. "How can you be so certain?" he demands, his voice cracking. "What if death is just nothing?" The prison falls silent. All eyes turn to Socrates, who responds not with logic, but by placing his hand on Phaedo's shoulder. For the first time, Socrates shares his own youthful terror of annihilation, describing how philosophy became his raft in that storm. He admits even now sometimes lying awake wondering, but concludes that whether the soul persists or not, a life lived in truth can never truly be erased. Phaedo wipes his eyes, realizing his teacher's greatest lesson isn't about death, but how to face uncertainty with courage. On the 20th day, Socrates' students smuggle in wine and figs, transforming the prison cell into an impromptu banquet. "Let us have some last symposium," Socrates proposes, raising his clay cup. "But instead of drunkenness, let our intoxication be wisdom." As night falls, they recreate their old debates about love, politics, and the ideal society, but now with urgent tenderness. Young Plato, usually silent, recites a poem about their first meeting, while Antisthenes tells crude jokes that make even the guards laugh. A young prison slave who had been silently listening for weeks finally kneels before Socrates. "Master," he stammers, "can someone like me, uneducated, owned by others, also have an immortal soul?" The room freezes. Even the noble-born students hold their breath. Socrates rises from his chains, places both hands on the boy's shoulders, and says, "Look at me. I am condemned, while you stand free in the only way that matters." He then leads the group in questioning what truly makes a person noble: birth, knowledge, or virtue. By sunset, the slave is debating metaphysics with aristocrats, while Socrates whispers to Plato, "Remember this lesson best of all." During the night watch, the armored guard assigned to Socrates, a battle-scarred veteran of Sicily, suddenly removes his helmet. "I heard your trial," he growls. "They called you a coward for avoiding war." In the flickering torchlight, the soldier confesses his own disillusionment. How Athenian generals send thousands to die for nothing, while Socrates fights only with words, yet never retreats. He presses a fig into the philosopher's hand. At dawn, the guard resumes his stern posture. Young Plato realizes true courage isn't blind obedience, but moral consistency. On the morning of the 28th day, Socrates does something unexpected. He asks his students to teach him. "Show me what you've learned," he says, lying on the prison floor like a student at their feet. One by one, they recount his greatest lessons on justice, virtue, and the examined life. But when Plato speaks of the soul's perfection, Socrates interrupts. "No, truth isn't about memorizing my words. It's about finding your own." He makes them argue against his theories, laughing when they stumble. The moment philosophy becomes a scripture, he warns, it dies. As the guards arrive with the hemlock, Socrates' final instruction is this: question everything, even me. The jailer enters at dawn, carrying the bronze cup of poisoned hemlock mixed with wine. Socrates examines it curiously, asking practical questions about the dosage and effects that even the executioner can't answer. His clinical fascination with the mechanics of death unsettles his weeping disciples. When the jailer admits he's never seen a condemned man study his own execution, Socrates quips, "Then you've never seen a true physician of the soul at work." As the man withdraws to give them final privacy, Socrates runs his finger around the cup's rim, not in fear, but like a geometer measuring perfect proportions one last time. Though she has been a most demanding mistress, the disciples, through tears, scramble to find their own cups, dipping prison water to join this last toast. The guard, moved despite himself, brings a proper wineskin. As Socrates mockingly complains about Athenian stinginess, providing only poison without refreshments, the room erupts in half-hysterical laughter. For one suspended moment, death becomes just another subject to dissect, and thereby conquer. As the poison hemlock takes effect, Socrates suddenly grips Plato's wrist, not in pain, but in urgency. "Remember," he whispers, his voice thickening. "The body is a prison, but the mind holds the key." His fingers go slack mid-gesture, his unfinished thought hanging forever between them.